Greetings, distinguished delegates. I'm greeting you from New York City, and I could not be more thrilled to be with you. Let me express at the outset my great admiration for your wonderful country, one of the true cradles of civilization, one of the most beautiful places in the world. And let me express my admiration to you for this wonderful seminar, really a seminar based on a very deep and profound insight. And that is that the challenges that we face in the world today, the economic challenges, the social challenges, the environmental challenges, what we call sustainable development, can only be achieved on the basis of peace. I thank so much Ambassador Xian for the aphorism that he just offered to us, that without peace, our life, our economy, our goal of sustainable development would be like a tree without roots. I think that this is very wise, I would say typically wise wisdom of Chinese civilization, and absolutely the right context for us today. And this is why I'm so thrilled that you have picked this topic so wisely, and also so grateful that you have given me the opportunity to share a few words with you. Let me say very, very briefly just a word about sustainable development itself. It is, in my view, the most important concept of our time. It is the idea that we want a holistic approach to human well-being. And indeed, the holistic approach is based on four ideas, all interconnected. First, that we should have economic well-being, material well-being based on our technological know-how, and that is the global storehouse of technological know-how, which is advancing at a wonderful rate and thereby enables us to live in a world of shared prosperity. We are well beyond the idea where we think we have to win over some other country in order to have our prosperity. We have the know-how, we have the means to have shared prosperity in the world, not as a struggle against other countries, but as a common aspiration and a shared realistic goal. Second, sustainable development means social justice. It means, in the language of the United Nations, that no one should be left behind. No group within society, no part of our society's women or girls at the expense of men, no minority groups, no indigenous populations that have faced such hardship in many places in the world, but that all parts of the world and all regions within countries and all parts of multi-ethnic nations should share in the prosperity. The third objective of sustainable development is the environmental objective of us protecting and being stewards of a planet on which we desperately need to protect the bases of our very lives. I think Georgia can appreciate this as a great core of agricultural civilization in the world, as the country that gave us viticulture, the country to which we owe our wine and so much else. If we don't protect nature, we lose not only our physical survival, but we lose our culture as well. And we are in grave danger from human-induced climate change, from the destruction of ecosystems, from deforestation, from destruction of marine life, from massive pollution. And this is why we have taken on the environmental challenges, but we have not succeeded yet in curbing these terrible excesses of our modern economy. The fourth area of sustainable development, indeed, is peace and global cooperation and regional cooperation. No country, certainly not a relatively small country, but even a giant like China or a giant like the United States or India or Russia, can succeed in achieving prosperity, social justice, and environmental sustainability alone. All of this requires cooperation. Our ecosystems, for example, the Black Sea, cannot be saved by any country alone. The Black Sea is fed by rivers coming from multiple countries, with more than a dozen countries contributing to the pollution that flows into the Black Sea. How can one even contemplate saving the Black Sea as a vital ecosystem other than through cooperation? How can one consider a low-carbon energy system other than through the interconnection of wind and solar and geothermal and hydroelectric and other zero-carbon energy sources connecting neighboring countries together? How can one even consider economic well-being without the land corridors in which Georgia plays an essential role, connecting Europe and Asia, in the middle corridor from east to west, and in the north-south corridor connecting Russia and the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean? It's not possible to have economic well-being. It's not possible to reach the prosperity that we want without transport networks, without trade, without interconnectivity. And this also requires peace. So sustainable development is our urgent, global, shared objective. And notably, it's supported by every part of the world. It was adopted by all 193 UN member states as in adopting the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm terribly sorry that my own government in the United States has recently repudiated the idea of sustainable development and even come out against the Sustainable Development Goals. This is a mistake, a bit of a tragedy, I think a bit of misunderstanding, because the United States needs this as much as any other country. After all, Los Angeles burned to the ground in part of the city this year because of climate effects. Florida was hammered by Category 4 and Category 5 hurricanes because of climate change. The United States is hardly impervious to these factors. But I would say that the rest of the world certainly understands that the Sustainable Development Goals are essential, and SDG 16 calls for peaceful societies, and SDG 17 calls for global cooperation, which means that there's a recognition from the very start of nearly the entire world that these goals cannot be achieved by one country alone, and they can certainly not be achieved in the time of war. And so this raises the question for you, for Georgia, for your wonderful country, for your 10,000-year-old civilization that has given so much to the rest of the world. How should a small state operate in the midst of the current uncertainties? You've phrased this section of the forum, how can small states survive in big power politics? And I think there are a couple of points that are absolutely essential for Georgia, and I would say for other small but great countries around the world to understand. And the first, if I may say so, is to look at a map. This is crucial. this is the most important insight. No country anywhere can thrive other than in a peaceful neighborhood with cooperation of its neighbors. I often say to governments in any place in the world, look to your north, look to your south, look to your east, look to your west, and get along with your neighbors. This is the first prerequisite of achieving sustainable development, is regional cooperation. And of course, your region, the South Caucasus, is one of the most magnificent treasures of the world, but also historically one of the most complicated regions of the entire world. Every empire has come from east or west or north or south to the South Caucasus at some point, because it is precisely the meeting point of Europe and Asia, both in the north-south direction, connecting Russia with the Persian Gulf and with the Indian Ocean, and it is the great east-west corridor connecting Eastern Eurasia with Western Eurasia. And as such, it is extraordinary in its role and value to all of the world, but it means that you are in an extremely complicated neighborhood. And historically, three major powers of the last 1,000 years have played a huge role, of course. The Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and various Persian empires. And until today, the three great regional powers that surround the South Caucasus, if I could put it that way, are Russia, Turkey, and Iran. And your safety, of course, depends on those three regional powers as well. I think there's something extremely important right now, and that is that Russia, Turkey, and Iran are getting along today on good terms. And this is absolutely crucial for the South Caucasus. Russia and Iran have a security agreement as of January 17th, 2025, and that is not only a mutual security agreement, but also security for the South Caucasus. Russia and Turkey are on good relations, even though Turkey is a member of NATO. It is also a country that understands its history very, very well. It is a country that understands the 700-year history of the Ottoman period and Turkey's complex role in the region of West Asia. And so it doesn't act like a Western European member of NATO or like a US country. Turkey understands to have good relations with Russia, and that's why it's hosted recently the talks between Russia and Ukraine, fraught as those are. And Iran, of course, is another great civilization, not only a modern nation, but a civilization that stretches back more than 5,000 years. And it is a country that is a repository of great civilizational insight. And now Iran, fortunately, now has much closer relations with the neighbors, both with Turkey and with the Arab countries in the Middle East. This is extraordinarily good news for the South Caucasus. It is the basis, actually, for your prosperity. The good relations of these powers, but also, obviously, the good relations of Russia and China, the participation of Russia, China, and India in the BRICS nations is also a security and a very important positive development for the South Caucasus. I'm thrilled that I'm following Ambassador Xian in this presentation, because the role of China in your prosperity is extraordinarily important. China is not only itself obviously a pillar of global civilization, but is a pillar of the world economy right now. I would quibble slightly with Ambassador Xian, if I might, politely. I believe China has the largest economy in the world, not the second largest economy. Of course, it depends on how things are measured. If the economies are measured at so-called market prices and exchange rates, China comes in second. But if the economies are measured at so-called purchasing power parity or international prices, China's about 30% larger than the United States. And I believe that's a more accurate reflection of the state of affairs today. China is certainly the greatest industrial nation in the world. It's at the cutting edge of technology. It's at the cutting edge of green and digital technologies that the world needs for sustainable development. And it is at the eastern end of Eurasia, and it seeks the South Caucasus as a vital corridor to connect with Western Eurasia. And so China plays a huge role for Georgia's future. So does India, by the way, through the north-south corridor, connecting the Indian Ocean with Russia. So in this sense, I believe that peace for the South Caucasus is actually in relatively good stead right now, because the major regional powers, Turkey, Iran, and Russia, and the major powers of at least Eastern and Southern Eurasia, China, Russia, India, are all working together on these corridors. So, what is the problem? The problem, unfortunately, has been my own country. And the problem has been actually the European Union in its peculiar way. If I may say, with all respect, Georgia is not a European Union country, in my opinion. It's not even part of Europe from a geographer's point of view. It's a part of Western Asia, being south of the crest of the Great Caucasus Mountains by the traditional definition of geography. And when you look at the map, Georgia is certainly not a North Atlantic country. The whole idea of Georgia becoming part of NATO is a wild, I would say crazy, dangerous idea that originated more than 30 years ago in the US deep state. It actually originated 180 years ago in the British Empire. I may say even more than a century before NATO existed. And the idea was nothing to do with Georgia's security, I can assure you. The United States barely knows, unfortunately, about Georgia. It thinks it's a southern state of the United States, not a country in the South Caucasus. But the United States thinks about Russia, just like the British Empire thought about Russia. And the idea was that Georgia could be used to help break up Russia. This is the sad truth of the last 35 years. It's actually the sad truth going back to 1853, when Lord Palmerston and Napoleon III launched the Crimean War. The idea since roughly 1840 has been to try to weaken Russia in the Black Sea region. And this became part of NATO and CIA doctrine as well. The idea that Russia should be surrounded in the Black Sea. And this is the origin of the idea of expanding NATO to Georgia, not because of Georgia, but because of the US contest with Russia. And this goes back to 1992, and then 1997 with Zbigniew and then to the 2008 invitation to Ukraine and to Georgia to join NATO, which was one of the absolute disastrous ideas of our time, because Russia understood completely this was a direct attack on Russia's national security. And one only has to consult a map to understand what this was about. The idea was that NATO, meaning the United States, would surround Russia in the Black Sea. Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, and Georgia would be U.S. allies with U.S. military bases and therefore render Russia essentially shut off from the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East. And these goals were actually spelled out in U.S. documents quite clearly by none other than Zbigniew Brzezinski, for example. Well, all of this was a predicate to war. The war that came in 2008 in Georgia's neighborhood, and the war that came to Ukraine in 2014. Remember that the Ukraine war did not start in February 2022. The war in Ukraine started in February 2014, when the United States helped to overthrow a neutral government in Ukraine and to install a regime in Ukraine that was committed to pushing Russia out of Crimea and putting the United States militarily into the Black Sea region through membership of Ukraine in NATO. And that's when this war started, on February 22nd, 2014, with the violent overthrow of Viktor Yanukovych and the installation by the United States of a regime that is in power until today, committed to NATO enlargement. Fortunately, we think the President of the United States today, Donald Trump, is understanding that NATO enlargement to Ukraine is not only practically impossible, but extraordinarily unwise. Indeed, I would say reckless. And the same regarding NATO enlargement to Georgia. It is not to protect those countries. It is absolutely to threaten, surround, limit, constrain Russia. So this is the origin of the true challenge today for Georgia, is being trapped in not the regional power politics of Russia, Turkey, and Iran, but in the international politics of the NATO alliance on one side and Russia on the other side. And I'm sorry to say that the European Union became completely implicated in this way of thinking. The European Union should understand that Georgia is not even an appropriate member of the European Union. Most of Georgia's trade will be and should be with Russia, with Turkey, with Iran, with your neighbors in the South Caucasus, with India, with China, and of course also with the US and Europe, but not overwhelmingly or exclusively. That's not the geography. And as I said, even a geographer would claim that Georgia is not part of Europe. It's a part of Western Asia. Why the Europeans got caught up in this, I think it was also the hubris and arrogance of the Western world after the fall of the Soviet Union, that now the United States and its junior partner, the European Union, could pick up all the pieces on the chessboard, as Zbigniew Brzezinski called it. So from my point of view, ladies and gentlemen, your situation in Georgia is actually reasonably good if there is clarity about the geopolitics. The clarity that I'm urging is, first, cooperation within the neighborhood. That means cooperation of South Caucasus countries among themselves, Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. Three absolutely interconnected countries. They've had their disputes, but they will rise or fall together because the three countries absolutely depend on peace among the three for making the true function of the region its wonderful tourism, its unique ecology, its great agricultural productivity, its energy sector, and its transport connectivity function. With war among the three, with hostile relations among the three, impossible. And then to broaden that out, of course, in the famous 3+3 concept, the three South Caucasus countries working closely together with the neighborhood, with Russia, with Turkey, with Iran, three civilizational countries as well, great civilizations that have had a lot of experience with each other over the hundreds of years, but now can see South Caucasus as a shared vital part of their own economic well-being and not a cause of conflict. We are not in the days where the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire are competing with each other, or where the Russian Empire and the Persian Empire are fighting with each other. We can have a 3+3 formula. And then to conclude, to absolutely prevent the South Caucasus from being a pawn in the Western game, which in any event is coming to a conclusion, I believe. The South Caucasus should not be used to weaken Russia. The idea is a madness. The idea of Georgia being a member of NATO is a madness. The idea of Ukraine being a member of NATO is a madness, a clear, utter provocation to great power conflict that had no reason to take place. Had Ukraine remained neutral, there would never have been a war in Ukraine. And Ukraine wanted neutrality, but the United States and some parts of Ukraine overthrew a neutralist government. And so if we can avoid the great power games, if we can say, let geography prevail and take its course, stop playing great power rivalries, and especially let borderlands like the South Caucasus not suffer at the hands of imperial dreams or fantasies, then I believe South Caucasus will be secure and the world will be secure. The greatest way to achieve global peace is for the major powers to stay out of each other's way. I say to keep in their own lanes. We don't need the United States militarily present in the South Caucasus or in Ukraine or in the Black Sea for that matter. We don't need the United States armed to the teeth in East Asia, in Japan, in Korea, in the Philippines, in Guam. This is a provocation to China. It's not necessary. Major powers don't need to attack tiny countries, except in the context of great imperial rivalries. And that's why Ukraine would have been safe had the United States not pushed for this idea of weakening Russia through the encroachment of U.S. military power. So, in summary, ladies and gentlemen, your wonderful country, your 10,000-year civilization, your great contributions to the world, and your beauty as a tourist attraction, as a agricultural hub, as a manufacturing center, as an advanced IT center, and as a transport bridge, and not only transport bridge, but civilizational bridge of East and West and North and South, is a treasure for you, a source of future prosperity, a reason for your rapid growth and an overwhelming reason to keep the peace. And I hope that the United States and Europe will respect, honestly, geography, be friendly and be supportive, but not look to expand their reach to the endangerment of your country or to the endangerment of Russia or India or China. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, so much for this unique forum. Thank you for including me today. I can't wait to be back in Georgia and in Tbilisi, where I have so many friends and colleagues, and I salute you for this great initiative. Thank you very much.